I'll take off my glasses for this one. Okay, for this is a surprising bit of information that came out saying that the Nikon DF, the doesn't film, came out and it's got the best high ISO low noise sensor ever. It's even beating the Nikon D3S and the D4, and everyone's like going, how is that possible? It's got the same sensor as the D4, does it not? So where this information came out on was on dxomark.com. I put a link to this down in the description. It's a good place for you to compare and contrast cameras and their sensors. Well, more about their sensors rather than anything else. So it's not about their ergonomics or how fast the processing is and all that kind of stuff. This is really all about sensor tech on here. So it's saying, I'm going to look at it. So the Nikon DF achieves a DxO sensor score of 89 points. Okay, the actual overall score, I'm not that interested in that. That's never important. But it sits first place in our low light scores with an ISO of 3,279. I'll go into that in a minute. I think what that means is you can have the ISO up at 3,200 before you even start to notice the first level of noise. Oh, amazing! Okay, it's only marginally ahead of the D4, and more by luck than judgment is ahead of the D3S. So what I say is that although these are massive numbers, there's very little difference between the D4 and the D3S. So it's really just, it's almost what do you call it, functional error that you've got of, you can see something a little bit bigger, it could be a little bit lower, it could be the time of day, it could be the temperature of the sensor, it could have been 100 of different things that made the tiny little fraction differences. But so far, what they've done is they found that it's had the highest fractional difference out of the rest. In real world terms, so it really admits that in real world terms, the low light capabilities are pretty much the same. Okay, so let's have a look at the low ISO comparison team here. So if you go to camera sensor rankings by DxOMark, you've got this cool little graph here which shows you lots of little dots. You're thinking, what's the best here? Well, what it's showing is the higher up you get is, well, the more to the right is the years, and the higher up is the more sensitive. Oh no, that's overall score. Sorry, we've got to change it to low light sports. So same thing, over to the right is the age, and the height is showing the highest ISO going on here. And if you move your cursor around and you just plonk it on little dots all over the place, it will change the field on the left to the camera which you are on top of. So if you want to see some camera back in 2004, that was the Canon 1D S Mark II was the best at that time. There's nothing better than that. And then, lo and behold, it's got better and better. Here, we're up to the D700, but now we're getting some ones which are D3S, and now another one, the DF, so at the absolute top of the scale here. But I'm just looking at this and going, how much of difference is that really? Is that to the point where I'm going, oh my god, if the next camera comes out with the same sensor as the Nikon DF, and it's like the Nikon D700, would I totally be tempted with that? So this is where I do a little bit of hunting. So I've done a comparison. You can compare 3 cameras in one go, and I've got the D90, just for fun, the D700, my camera, and the Nikon DF. So what we can see is that on aspects like dynamic range, I never really trust the print. Print's always a bit of a guff kind of thing going on here. So on the screen, because that's what I'm looking at my images on afterwards, the DF certainly has a little bit higher ISO than but the D90 actually does the best. Well, the D90, in terms of price, certainly does better there, but does better than the D700. So dynamic range, definitely the DF is good. And compared to, let's say, we're getting to ISO 1600, we're going, that's about 1 stop's difference going on there. So a stop, I would say, is a good amount. Now, if we go to the signal to noise, so what they're saying is anything above 30 decibels of noise, the lower the number that gets, the worse the noise is. So in fact, if you have it over here, yeah, it's just say if you bring it down here, it's a mess. If you have it up here in the green zone, it's nice. But they say that the just about 30 or 32 decibels is considered to be it's still a perfect image. And with the D90, it seems like the perfect noise is around about ISO 400, which is well, it's okay, but you could certainly do better. Or what the camera actually says is it's actually ISO 800, but it's actually more around about 589. So again, even in the cameras, there's a variance of what the actual ISO is compared to what the registered ISO is, so it's always a little bit confusing. But what I'm looking at is on screen, the D700 and the DF are pretty much following each other all the way until you get up to above 3200. So if you look carefully at the stats, and I would always say, like, some people are always like, oh, stop looking at the stats, stop looking at the stats. Like, look, fair enough, don't be bothered about the stats if all you're doing is conceptual, arty pictures and all that kind of stuff. But if your work requires you to have fairly clean, noise-free images at what can potentially be ISOs of 2000 and above, and you're not really kind of like, I've got my composition, I've got my layouts, I know how to take a photo, I just want to make sure that I have the opportunity to just play around with all the settings that I want without the fear of it kind of slightly ruining my images, then I would always say, and also if you're thinking, right, I'm going to spend some money, I want to make sure I'm spending it on the things which I need it spent on, so in other words, ISO performance, or maybe there's only one aspect, so you've always got to think maybe it's actually going to be the frames per second that I need, or the flash communication that I need, or some guff like that. But here, if you are just looking at low noise and high ISO, it looks like, for me, certainly still, even the sensor in the Nikon DF, okay, it's a 16 megapixel compared to a 12, but in terms of noise or ISO performance, not fast. Rarely am I going up to 6400. I've done that at a wedding, and yeah, you can get some bits back, but see, once you're getting to this, what's this? Is this 20 decibels or something around about here? It's pretty much a guff image. So they're saying you've got a full stop at the end. So at the end where the DF is saying it's 25,000 ISO, Nikon, or the D700 is at 12,000 ISO. So yeah, it's okay. But the actual difference is 8,000 to 17,000. So there's a pretty big difference there. But in terms of the ISO range which I'll be using, not seeing a difference. Not seeing a huge amount of difference. And then the print is always a bit iffy because it's talking about us 8 megapixel printed image, and it depends on the size of the image that you're printing. So it could still be an 8 megapixel, but it could be massive, or it could be small, or whatever. So this one I always find is a little bit like, where do you get these stats from? But there it's saying it's a good 2 stops more than the Nikon D90. But again, compared to the D700, not really worth changing or spending my money for that function. Anyway, that's just my little suggestion. Keep your eyes peeled on the information. And certainly when a camera comes out saying, it's got the best ISO sensitivity in the world, is it really? Really?